And we're live.
And we are live.
Hooray!
Huzzah. Hello, everybody. Welcome to your favorite weekly series, Grace Under Pressure, where we feature royal concerts from around the known world. Now on a new night. This week is Countess Eliska of the West Kingdom, and next week will be Duchess Kershari of the Fallen Stars of Adenville. And now
I think it's Kershari.
Kershari.
I
had to step into Joel's and mispronounce something.
Yeah. So we're going to meet our hosts. And as you can see, Joel is not with us this week. He was planning on not being with us, but then that got canceled and he had some dental work done today. And I thought about luring him onto the show, even with his puffy, numb face, because as everybody knows, I don't hold much back about when I try, I very gently tease Joel. But decided that was just low-hanging fruit and I'm better than that. So so Shaxi graciously offered to step in, and she is my stunt host, my dear friend, and also the Sisters Interview Network COO. That's what I decided you are. Shaxi is the Chief Operating Officer. Ashaxi has been playing in the SCA for 26 years. She is inspired by Sir Octamasades, her sister Serifkin, and her ginger babies and laughter. And ginger babies include one child who is my godson, or godless son, since I am not a woman of Christian leanings, but he is my semi-ginger baby. And then she also has a bunch of cats who are all gingers, which is very, very cool. So
and a daughter.
Well, yes, the daughter, of course. Never forget that. And in fact, the thing I delight in is going to thrift stores and finding things that are impossibly vivid colors for redheads to wear and buying them for her. It is one of my very, very favorite things to do.
That's a great hobby.
And she always wears them. And I am joined by my co-host, Duchess Dagmar of Antir. Her first reign was as Princess of Sinagua, and since she has had 2 reigns in Antir with her husband, Duke Thorin Nielsen.
That's right.
Okay.
So I was a swan princess, which is kind of a big deal,
Yeah.
And someday I'll do the swan walk for you, Ellie.
Okay.
I don't think you've ever seen me do that.
I am the heart of the swan a couple times over.
Oh,
yes.
Very nice. I should know what that is, but I don't.
It's the loser award.
Okay. Oh, I never got that one.
Oh, I should have worn my Commendables earrings.
Oh.
When you lose twice.
So for those of you who may not have guessed, I actually know Eliska fairly well, having lived in the same kingdom as Eliska, and also we are long friends. But before we get too deep into that, I did want to mention how grateful we are for the Sisters Interview Network hosting us on their channel. So Ashaxi, thank you, and thanks to Rifkin, who do so many of these interviews, and they have really added to our collective knowledge, history, oral history of the SCA during the pandemic. It's been a real silver lining of the last year, is that we have recordings of all of these interviews, and it's just going to be an incredible resource going forward for people who are curious about SCA history. And even after the pandemic, maybe they can't get out to all these kingdoms and all of these places and meet all these people, but it really does feel like we're getting this wonderful introduction to the known world. So thank you guys so much.
They're amazing.
It's been super fun for us too. So should I introduce our guest?
If you'd like to. I just wrote that little one sentence if you want.
So Countess Eliska became a countess in 2006 in the West Kingdom, and she is a laurel and a pelican and a leader in the West Kingdom scribal community.
That's all I wrote, because I figured the rest of us, you'll just tell us. And at first, we should start with the fact that living in the West Kingdom, you did you start there? What are your SCA origins? What's your story? How did you
So
all of that?
first, can I be like completely obnoxious and correct the pronunciation of my name?
Oh, you
Yes,
should, because I
please.
just call you Ellie all the time. Sorry. Eliska?
Okay. It's Eliska.
Yeah.
So
Eliska.
either think of it like if you're drunk or if you're telling a secret,
Yes.
or if you're telling a drunk secret. But it's
Thank you. I apologize for mispronouncing.
It's I should have done.
I said it wrong for the first 5 years, so till I met a Czech speaker and she corrected it.
Oh,
for
so
me.
is it Czech? I actually didn't know that.
It is. That
That's
is
cool.
my family background is on my parents' side. My dad's side is actually Bohemian. So
Very
that
cool.
was part of what drove my choice of a name.
Very cool. Well, tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did you come to be who you are today? Just in 3 or 4 sentences.
So I kind of found the SCA by accident. A long ago boyfriend had introduced me to the Renaissance Fair, the Northern California Renaissance Fair. And yes, to answer your question, I've always lived in the West. I am a native California and have actually never moved outside of state, although I've traveled out. And so I've always lived in the West and started playing by accident, actually, because I got called by someone who ran a LARP game. He needed some NPC, some non-player characters.
The SCA is a LARP game. I just want to say that.
A different LARP game.
It's like a really disorganized LARP. That's what we are.
So I showed up and I, ran around the park and guided people on their journeys. And that was the one and only time I did it. But I had a lot of fun and I was hanging out with all the players afterward. And one of them was planning a trip to the Ren Fair, and I hadn't been in a couple of years. And so I thought, that sounds like fun, I want to go. And we very quickly became, I think it was opening weekend, and we quickly became this little group of fair groupies that showed up both days, every weekend. It helped that I was living 15 minutes away from Black Point site. And so when it was over, when the fair closed down, one of them called up in December and said, "Hey,
you seem like you have a lot of free time."
Hey, do you want to go to a party? We can dress up in our Ren Fair stuff and we can, we can feast and we can dance and we can shop and we can do all of this stuff, but it'll be in January, not in the fall." And I was like, yeah, let's do that. So we went to 12th night. I actually went to 12th night and left 12th night without ever hearing a word about the SCA itself. I did not know I was at an SCA event. I didn't know what the SCA was. And then probably 6 months later, same guy who had dove in head first, Rodrigo Bernardes, he called back and he's like, "That thing we did, it happens all the time." So he invited me to an event in Golden Gate Park, and I went and had a great time and started making all the phone calls to learn about how to make it official. And I fell in. I was living in Marin, and the Shire up there is Calderium, which was populated by Duke Henrik of Han, who was at the first event, and his lady wife at the time, Viscountess Tasman of the Raven Tresses, who was a princess of Antir back in the day, and all sorts of other old timers, Patrice and Kevin and all of these other people. So they're like, yeah, turned out they hadn't been to an event in years. They were just getting together every month to have a dinner party.
I was going to say, there's a point in your SCA involvement when you stop knowing you're at SCA events again, where
Yes.
you're like, so you're like, I don't want to do anything. I just want to stay in my camp and drink, and I could do this at home a lot more comfortably. So is this an event or not? It's not. Okay, good. Like there's less work that way. Like you just
Well, you should have seen their faces when, so Steffi, my sister, and I, who were best friends, we joined together and we went to a couple meetings and we heard all the stories and, talked about all the things. And so we said, okay, let's go camping. Let's go to one of these events. And they all were like, camping?
that's hard.
We don't do that. Turns out they had like a Shire pavilion and they had all this infrastructure. They just hadn't used it in forever. And so they dusted it all off, because we're these bouncy, and we weren't even puppies. We were in our 30s. And they took us to show us the ropes, and it was looking back on it, it was a really amazing introduction to the SCA. So many people come in through the fringe or the real outside, and it was like we just right in.
I'm imagining this is what it'll be like when my kid is finally interested in my vinyl collection.
Yes.
Because, I'll be like, well, let's find a turntable and let's figure this all out. And we'll have to like clean them and make sure. Now you need to make sure you take care of these. There'll be just as many rules. So yeah.
That's how I got here. That's how I got to the SCA. And when they explained the whole name thing and persona thing, I started looking it up and looking up, check. Eliska, Queen Eliska was actually the mother of one of the Charles who, built the bridge and the university and all of that. And so I thought, well, she probably had it going on to have a son like that. And so and plus it's so close to my name, so close to Ellie to start with. So I thought that'll avoid some confusion. Mm-hmm. But the whole persona thing, I was like, nah.
I mean, how do you choose just one?
Too much to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I admire people who do. I admire people who invest in that and they have a story to tell. And some people even you can actually drop into character, which is cool. But that was never my bag.
Well, people who watch these interviews have heard me say this before. I was on the West Kingdom Laurel list, and somebody was complaining about how in the evenings that SCA events in the West had devolved into fancy dress cocktail parties. And I was like, that's why I'm in the SCA. It is a fancy dress cocktail party in a cow pasture with swords like that. What else is there really? I mean, all this other stuff is cool and I do it and I'm a Laurel and all of that. But I was like, isn't this the whole point, is that we're like just all kind of getting together because we like doing this? Yeah. So when people have persona stories, I'm like, that's great. You're into this. And there was probably a time when I had a persona story too. And then I got bored with my name and wandered off to some other culture and then wandered off to another culture and did another thing. So it's like, that was never my thing.
Right.
But I've stayed interested in fancy dress cocktail parties. So like, even if I don't drink,
fancy dress and cocktails.
Yeah. Even if I don't drink, even if it's just enabling other people's fun, sometimes I'm into it, or making my kid, like bringing him up in an organization that has, really great community and tries really hard to be a community.
Yeah.
And you've raised a child in the SCA. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Alexander in the SCA, but we call him Xander at home. He was born, he's 16 now. So he was, I don't know, 14 months old, 13, 14 months old when we stepped up. And it was, I remember thinking at the time that this would be so much easier if he was still an infant, and not mobile.
Oh.
I mean, infants have their own, demands, but he was a toddler when we were reigning. Oops.
I think all three of us have had young children in the SCA.
Yeah. It was,
So
and you just
yeah.
have to let it go. I remember we were up in Awertha, holding court at coronation slash investiture, and he got loose from whoever was holding him, and he's just like zooming back and forth. I'll just right in front of because there's this lovely, there's this wonderful space in front of the thrones and before all the people.
Right.
It's perfect for like a racetrack. And so it was zoom, zoom, zoom. And everybody was just kind of like, huh?
This is what we're doing now. That's right.
So yeah, it's he is we've been talking actually about now that he's getting very close to being an adult, and old enough and responsible enough to be left home, for a weekend if we wanted to. Does he want to keep playing? And he's not charging out there, but he likes it. He's got friends in the SCA, some of whom he's actually grown up with, and and some of them have gone their own ways and come back together. And so it's just like any other community, really. But especially being royal with a little kid, people were so kind and just jumping up. Duchess Ginevra, pretty much, well, it wasn't as soon as we won. It was as soon as Eric and Steffi won. So we won October Crown at the beginning of October. And my sister Steffi was going to be my head of court. It was like, we've got this handled, because she is like a second mom to Xander. And at the end of October, her consort Eric won Sinagua Coronet for her. Yes. And I was like, I'm trying so hard to be happy for you. But you just ruined all of my plans.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing for people to know about the West if they don't, is that there are two principalities who are downtown West Kingdom. Yes. Like they're not in the outer reaches of the kingdom. They are right in the center. Plus you have 3 royal reigns a year for the crown. And so you do end up with a lot of that happening where your retinues. A lot happening all at once. They're stretched really thin.
As soon as Steffi kind of got a new job, Duchess Ginevra actually stepped up and said, "Do you need a nanny?" And I said, "Yes, but who's going to take care of Xander?" So she was our nanny.
Yeah.
During the reign, and she's awesome because she's like the born mother. She's just like everybody's mother. She's so kind and gentle, and she gave him his first massage because she's trained as a masseuse. But yeah, it was interesting. So we'll see what he makes of it. Mm-hmm. He got really into youth combat in the last few years, but he can stay in it for another year. But honestly, by the time we have fighting again, I think he'll be he'll be 17 and he'll be too old for it. So we'll see if
And you mentioned he's very much adult size. Which, yes. That's a whole other layer of this, is the privilege that gives him in terms of his size and what that perception might be like for other parents.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting if he does make the transition, which is entirely up to him, to heavy fighting. He's used to tapping people because he doesn't want to hurt any of his friends, and getting shit and to be fair, being tapped in return. And so it's a very different thing. Heavy fighting, obviously. So we'll have to see if he's interested in that. But he does like the camping. He likes the socialization, even likes helping out, and he's not like a rabid pelican in the making, but he likes to be asked and to help people. And a lot of that, like we were talking about, is he knows he's big, and he'll hold that tent pole, he'll carry your stuff, he'll take advantage of his size and his strength. So I think that this community has been amazing in terms of supporting supporting a family. Yeah. And I've never really understood the people who just say, we're going to disappear while we have kids. Although that part of that might be that Xander was never into like soccer and baseball and all of those things that take you away on the weekend. And so I guess that's been good for our continued participation.
I think that's part of it. I think people who have very young children and have more than one, that can be a factor.
Yeah. Or they don't have the big family structure that I do.
And people, in the West, everybody does really know everybody. That was something that I was really struck by down there, was because everything is downtown West Kingdom, like, when I sat in the Laurel Council there, I knew every single person on that list. I knew who they were. But now in Ontario, we're so huge and we're so spread out, and there's so many people that the intimacy is not here. We have huge events here relative to West Kingdom events.
Yeah.
And it's good that the West Kingdom's like that. I actually I really miss it. And I miss that, you'd go through Gate and everybody who was running Gate was a royal peer, or, they were all people that when you rolled up, you were like, oh, you better not be rude to Gate anyway, but like, right. Here's some people who are like, they're going to tell you where you can park, and that's where you can park. You know what I mean? Like, which was cool. It was like, it just, everything was different. It was just really different, and it was more intimate, and I can see how that would help with kids.
Absolutely. It also helped that our household, our SCA family was having families. And so we had, a couple, probably four families inside our household who were actually having babies at about the same time. And so our household was full of kids.
That makes a difference.
That makes a really big
difference. Yeah.
I think I was a little out of sync. I was behind a lot of my friends, especially my friends who had sons, which, not to say boys and girls can't play together, but my kid wanted to play with other boys, and they were all so much older than him. So it does make it harder. And my son's on the autism spectrum, of course, so it makes it a little more challenging for us. Yeah. But I think, you find people in the SCA who speak that language and who understand, that if your kid has a meltdown in camp, it's fine. There's not, it's just part of the cost of being together, and he doesn't want to be that way either. He doesn't want to be dysregulated. And when I find those people and have found those people, it has made an enormous difference. And it probably helps too that the SCA probably attracts more than its fair share of people on the autism spectrum themselves. So for me, it was an incredible education in how to work with people across a lot of different, not just abilities, but communication styles, and, understanding, having more compassion for the types of experiences people are having at SCA events and how they might be very different from mine. Just for nothing, it's nobody's fault. We're just all different, right? Yeah. So, and I remember like with Dawn, with her young children, she was having kids at a time when a lot of people were partying really hard, and it wasn't compatible to have, like, a lot of her friends did not have young children and were not understanding of the needs to camp with, please don't smoke next to my tent. I have a baby asleep in here, that sort of thing. So
it's 4 a.m. Could you please not be drunk right outside my tent? Thanks.
Crocs aren't shoes. Yeah, exactly. That was that same event when we had to yell at the drunks.
I will confess that our little red wagon got quite a bit of use when Xander was, we bought it for war, so we bought this garden wagon from Osh, and we painted it our household red, and it was our war wagon. And then we realized that it was perfect to make it could be a pram. And so we would just tow Xander around to parties or break circles or whatever, and that kid sleeps through anything still. So we got very lucky in the parental lottery there.
I went to an event with the unassembled wagon in the royal trailer, and my guard put it together for me so that we could tow my kid, who was three 3.5, something like that.
Yep.
And I had guard members who did baby duty when there was
Awesome.
there was an Eric party, and I kind of wanted to go, and my kid could sleep through anything, and so they towed the wagon for me. I wasn't drinking, but I just wanted to be around people, and not stuck in my tent. And he didn't want to wake up with strangers. So, you figure this stuff out. And maybe on the surface, taking your baby to a party in a wagon seems kind of
when we had
to janky, but
when we had to start putting the back wall down because his feet were sticking out.
Yeah.
Maybe we need a different solution.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't we look at some slides before we go on to the next question? Because you have some great ones here. I'm going to pull them up.
This was fun to go back and through my history, and I had to go to print. I had to go to print collateral for some of it because
oh, that's funny.
Before I started.
There we go. This is adorable. You're wearing what a theater department might call medieval village generic.
Yes.
In this photo, so
that was this is actually after I started in the SCA, because my friend Isabel Dutermer is there with us in the Middle Eastern Choli, but those are my sisters, awesome. My actual biological sisters. So standing above me is my sister Steffi, who ended up becoming a viscountess, and the blonde is my twin sister, okay, who didn't ever play in the SCA, but she went to the fair with us once, and as you can see, decided she didn't like it. But we had fun.
Really funny. But I will say about these clothes, they are universally flattering. I've never seen anybody of any body shape who doesn't look good in the peasant blouse bodice skirt combination. And regardless of who you are, anybody can wear this, and it's sort of like you should be given your
yeah, you should be issued one.
You should at the beginning of and it's like what you do from there on is kind of whatever you can do to upgrade is your choice.
Yep.
So, that's awesome. All right, this is a great photo.
I think this is the first. I think this is the first 12th night that I actually knew it was a 12th night. So this would have been during my first year in the SCA.
I'm just a little worried because that turkey leg looks like it's undercooked, but maybe.
Yeah. Are you sure that's not my chin? That might have been like
I don't think so. Well, maybe it is.
It is.
Like your mouth is open like a boa constrictor.
Yeah. Sigh.
I'm a vegetarian, and I have been since I was 14. So I've never encountered, I've never had to eat meat prepared by a stranger in the SCA. But I am super astounded we don't have food poisoning more often than we do. Not that SCA feasts aren't wonderful, but there are conditions sometimes where people have prepared meals where I'm like, I don't know. Have you bleached?
Yeah, we had to judge a siege cooking contest at an event once where everything had been cooked like right then and right there, and I was like, I'm just gonna eat the sauce.
That's so funny. And actually, I should say too that I've had excellent SCA cooking mentors. I don't cook in the SCA, so they would be mentors if I actually did what they do, and that includes Tink and Ob, where they were making an Indian feast. I think it was really Tink at an event, and it was amazing food. And don't get me wrong, but that's where I met Ob, because we were in the kitchen of this thing, and everything had been pre-prepared in bags that were going to be put in hot water. Like, it was really hygienic. And he tried to feed me a bunch of meat. And I was like, no, I'm a vegetarian. And he found a bunch of golden raisins and he tries to put this hand of grubby raisins in my face. He's like, we want some raisins? And I thought he was making fun of me, like, oh, you're a vegetarian, so I'm going to feed you rabbit food instead. And he's like, no, I loved golden raisins. Like, they were one of my favorite foods. I thought it was a really nice treat. Of course, that I found that out after we were dating. So, but I always think about that, like, oh, there are people who really get it right.
Yes. Yes, and I have great respect for them. I did cook a feast once. It was for a small event, but Eric had won the Golden Rivers Championship and made me the lady of Golden Rivers. And these were early days, and one of our responsibilities was to hold the event that found our successors the next year. And so we decided to make it a feast and tournament. And, I cooked a feast for maybe 60 people. And boy, I was run ragged. That is an entirely, obviously it's an art form in and of itself, not just the cooking, but the actual managing of the feast.
The timing, everything. It's amazing. It's a huge skill. And when people do it well, nobody knows. Yes. They just get their food when they're supposed to. It's always when people don't do it well that people pay attention, right? And people get it right a lot. That's the thing. Like
they make it look so easy.
It's amazing to me. And I think about also when you're reigning and you're kind of at the whim of whatever food is put in front of you.
Yeah.
And, you go to a feast, you don't want to be rude, and that can be really challenging, especially if you have any food difficulties. I always told my retinue, my court, to feed me like a toddler. I'm like, just bring me slices of apples and some Fritos. I don't care. Just feed me what you would feed like a 4-year-old. And we should be fine. Because, it's really tough when you're sort of stuck on the thrones to, eat just random foods. You don't know how long you've been sitting out.
So one of the best pieces of advice that I got as Crown Princess was from Duchess Kinsworth, who said, you are not required to drink everything you're handed. And I took that, I expanded that to eating everything I'm handed. And that was very good. To start to practice saying no gracefully.
You may have heard me talk about this before, that I actually think of food on the consent continuum, that I do, because
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's something you put in your body. And we have a lot of hangups in our society about refusing food and whether or not that's a reflection on the way, the regard in which we hold the person who's offering it to us. Yes. But the reality is food can actually harm some people, and especially alcohol. Refusing alcohol and then having people have any kind of response that's anything other than, okay, great, is there something else I can offer you? Like, that's the only correct response. And watching some of the culture around alcohol, of people pressuring each other or saying, oh, you're not drinking, what's wrong? It's really strange. And I've been a vegetarian long enough that I've seen all of those behaviors in negative ways too, where people feel like they either have to lecture people about their food choices, or they feel like they feel challenged by the fact that I don't eat something that they do eat.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really weird.
It is really weird.
It's universal. How much people wrap up in food, any consumable that is not meant to be there. It's not a reflection on you personally or your hospitality or anything. It's just I don't eat sweets. I stopped eating sweets, and because a friend had, and she had done it, and she had a lot less joint problems. She was sleeping better, and I thought, well, I have joint problems and I haven't been sleeping. I think I'll try that. So I gave up sweets about 6 months ago, and I don't count carbs and things like that, but I just don't have cookies and candy and ice cream and cake and all of those things that made life so wonderful. And I actually, I don't miss it very much.
You can still have butter.
But people, more than alcohol, people are almost offended because they seem to think I'm making a commentary on their choice to eat sweets.
Yeah.
And I eat them all. I don't care. Have fun, knock yourself out. But I'm not judging you. I just have found that it's better for me.
Yeah. And I think that judgment piece, it doesn't take a lot of judgment for people to feel like they're going to get that from everywhere, and it's something we talk a lot about in my circle about how shame is an emotion. And shame, you can think of shame as being something where you're being asked to reject a part of yourself, and that is really uncomfortable for people. And in the SCA, we've dealt a lot with identity issues and shame, and the idea of, is this a value that we accept as a group? Is this not? What does that mean? And I think each time we encounter this, so maybe take food just as a microcosm of that, and the next time you have a food conversation with someone that doesn't go very well and it's uncomfortable, to maybe try and think about it like, how is this type of shame or judgment, how does this also play out in things that have a broader impact, like
right,
when we're talking about race, or we're talking about internalized sexism, or we're talking about any kind of toxicity that the SCA has cultivated, through not wanting to deal with it, or because we haven't thought about it in those terms, or whatever it is. So, but
and I think it's important to take people at face value. If I say I'm allergic to tomatoes and onions, I don't want to hear back, well, what kind of allergic? I mean,
yeah, are you gonna die?
Right. And
no,
then
I'm just gonna be unhappy.
Right. And at first I went into that shame spiral of, oh, well, I'm not technically allergic. And then I was like, you know what? No. And I said, well, it gives me explosive diarrhea and I'll be in the biffy for the next 2 days. So
yeah, not fun.
Go ahead, feed me onions and tomatoes. Let's do this.
Yeah, same. And it, or being accused of being picky.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if I were being really particular about who I slept with, would people like have that same level of judgment?
Yes.
Like when
probably not the same level, but yes, there is no boundary for what people are willing to judge each other for.
No, that's true.
And I think that that's something, and it is really difficult growing pains, but all of this, everything that we went through last summer and last fall with, the protests, and people having big aha realizations about how imperfect the world is and how imperfect our special society is. Mm-hmm. You really saw this shame thing, and it's really tragic that that people have not been taught to have, and I'm just as bad. I'm terrible at confrontation. But people have been taught, they have not been taught to have these difficult conversations about what's really happening without internalizing this shame. And so people reject some of these ideas because it means that they were blind, or it means that, and instead, why can't you just say, wow, I had no idea, I'm going to do better.
Yeah.
Nobody needs you to flagellate yourself. Just be open.
But if you want to, we're okay with that too. You can totally flagellate yourself.
That is your deal. But we're not asking you to,
no.
Unless we have a completely consensual relationship about that.
Well, and I think consent is a really big piece of this, because
yes.
that is where this starts. Has somebody provided meaningful consent to participating in something? And if you have any qualms about that at all, step back from it. That's number one. And number two, just because something's imperfect doesn't mean you can't love it still.
Right.
So you can still love the SCA. And I think that's really hard. And I think that's hard for people to feel, oh, you're criticizing something that's important to me. So you're criticizing me and you're, whatever. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe you do need to accept some critique, but that doesn't mean that you can't love it. And again, if shame is a rejection of self, if you're being asked to reject something about yourself, or if that's how it feels, if that is the premise of shame, what does that mean when you think about an organization or you think about an activity? Is this really about the organization or is this about you? And if it's about you, do the work. And if it's about your org, do the work. And if it's about your friends, do the work.
Well, I wish people, and I try, I fail, but I try to think about it this way, that if I am coming to you and saying the words you're using are hurtful and harmful, and I'm actually telling you that I think you're a person who doesn't mean to come across that way. If I just thought that you were, if I just thought that you were a heinous individual, I would just
if you want to
have nothing to do with you.
Right.
If I'm coming to you to say, I think that, the words you're choosing or the actions you're taking, I don't think you mean to be harmful, but here's how it could be coming across. I'm doing that because I trust you to be a good person who wants to care for the people around them. And I try and remind myself that when I'm corrected or receive critique also, that somebody's telling me this because they want me to be the best person that I can be. So
and also that may be what they need from you, but other people might need something different. It's complex. And that's, it goes back to like, if you can remember the stats of all of your favorite baseball players, you can also remember some details about how people you care about would like to be treated. Yeah. And, not to pick on baseball, Pokemon, dinosaurs, I don't care, whatever it is, like whatever you have vast knowledge of, you can also remember, you can also remember things that might be important to your friends. And, I go around with this sometimes with people with the R word, where it's like, you might be okay using it and hearing it, but I'm not okay with it. And neither are my friends who have any kind of, neurological difference or have had learning difficulties. They don't want you to use the R word around them.
Yeah, because chances are that it's been used against them.
That's right. So it's like, it doesn't matter what you think. What matters is how you're harming people. Can you pull back from using that so that you're not actually harming people? Yeah, it's really complex.
I don't want to be Pollyanna about this, but I have faith that the SCA is going to come out on the other side of it. I have faith that the SCA is made of a community of imperfect people who are trying really hard and are going to get there. Maybe not to perfection, but I think we're going to get there. And otherwise I would stop playing.
Yeah. And communication doesn't have to be comfortable. So I think that's a big problem. And I also am like, and the people who are telling you what you need to hear don't have to be likable either. You don't have to like them. And that, in the SCA, we get kind of hung up sometimes on, well, they're not very nice about it. It's like, so, that doesn't mean, like, if you need someone to be nice to you for you to believe them, all of human history is working against you. I don't understand that. So, it's a very weird idea. Let's go back to the photos, shall we? Because for a long time, I had that picture of you eating the turkey leg up on the screen, and I took it down. All right, so let's go back to this. Here we go.
So that's me with my Laurel, Aja Desjardins, who we lost to breast cancer several years ago. This is returning to my first event. So this is at a debauchery in Golden Gate Park, but it's not my first one. But this is the woman who introduced me to scribal work, and she became like a sister to me, and she was one of the Caldarium crew, and they had a bunch of old Super 8 movies that that Henrik had collected, and I think most of them he had filmed himself. And one of them started with, the big old storybook, opening up, and it said "Once Upon a Time" in calligraphy.
Like when Sleeping Beauty
Yeah,
the animated.
yeah. And so, we're watching this with a bunch of, my kind of fair crew and a bunch of people. We were having a movie night at my house, and people were like, "Oh, it was done at Pennsic 6, and it started with a silhouette shot of Aja belly dancing." Oh. And someone in the group was like, "Oh, I want to belly dance," and then they had some fighting, and people were like, "Oh, I want to fight," and I'm like, "Can we go back to the book, because I would really like to be able to write like that." And it turned out that Aja was the one who had calligraphed that. And she went and dug out, she hadn't done it in years, but she went out and she dug out all of her tools and supplies and went out and bought new ink and new paint and started teaching me to calligraph. Wow. And associated with that, started teaching me how to manage paint, which was not I resisted thinking of myself as an artist for a very, very long time. And to me, there was a clear line between lettering and painting, and painting was art, and I wasn't an artist. And in fact, the Laurel Council agreed with me, I think, because I was laureled for my calligraphy. And it was made very clear to me that I was a C laurel, not a C&I laurel. But I learned how to paint and eventually learned how to draw and started designing scrolls, because I am a controlling and manipulative person, and I hated the idea of calligraphing a scroll text and sending it off, and not ever knowing what happened with it, or even worse, seeing what happened with it and not liking it. And so I thought, so, and Aja said, well, the cure for that is you have to do both parts. And so she started teaching me to draw and paint as well.
I want to make it clear that anybody can do lettering on any of my stuff. I never want to do the lettering. I hate it. It is I can do like very basic, very like elementary calligraphy, and it looks like exactly what you would expect that descriptor to look like. And nope. If all the letters didn't need to be the same size, I would be golden. But that seems to be part of the standard. I don't know.
Yeah, there are some standards there.
Whatever. So, how about this lovely slide?
Oh gosh. So again, these are early days. I tried to put these pictures chronologically. This is an astray, and I think it's actually the astray I set myself on fire. But the turkey leg 12th night, we went to Guibert's house. I can't remember his last name, but we went to his house back in the day that they had
de horror fleur,
something like that. Fleur, maybe
the horror flower, as we used to joke.
Well, so I'm at this party, and I learned about this later. So in the picture with me are Parlin McGillivray and Eric Mallory. So we're at this party, and I'm meeting people, and which is actually I'm not actually shy, but I am a little reserved. I don't tend to put myself out there with strangers, but I was enjoying this party, and apparently the tall men were hanging out and asking who I was, and Eric said, "I don't know, but I'm calling dibs."
Because that's a thing.
Parlin's like, "You can do that?" Eric's like, I just did, which Shaxi, I don't know if you know these gentlemen, but Dagmar, I'm sure that you can imagine.
That's all you need to know about them.
Exactly
really.
that.
That conversation happened.
So what actually happened is I actually started dating Parlin, but I started consorting for Eric. And I consorted for him actually until Fabian and I became a couple. So this was in Estrella, and that scarf I have around my head with the big black tassel. Later on in the evening, I was at a party and I had moved the scarf down to my hip because I was dancing, and I was doing these big twirls. And Fabian, he was king at the time. He's having this massive party, and he had these giant fire pits. He had like these enormous, like 3 foot by 2 foot fire pits that we used to joke you could land an airplane with these. He would just, if he lined them up, you could land a plane. And
I think they were the carcasses of vehicles that used a lot of gas that you can't drive in California anymore. They're just the carapaces of these. Yeah.
So I'm twirling, and my, the scarf goes flying, and that tassel actually flew over the flame and caught fire. So I unintentionally became a fire dancer until someone came and tackled me and put me out. Oh, yes.
But are all your tassels made out of wool now?
I don't have a lot of tassels anymore. I don't really dance anymore.
Yeah, same.
But this outfit was one from Aja's day, back in the early 70s. She passed it on to me, and I can't even pretend to squeeze into it anymore. You're actually going to see it on one of my granddaughters later in this photo reel.
I think everybody needs to know that is a rite of passage when you have SCA clothes where you're like, I need to find a teenager who can wear this because I am never going to be that size again, and that's fine.
That's fine.
I'm not as cold as I used to be. We're fine.
We're fine. We're fine. So this pretty much is my relationship with Eric. We consorted together for a few years, and he has become the little brother that Stiffy and I never had. So I do have 3 brothers. They're all older than me. But Eric became my little brother, and we have had some ridiculously fun times together, and have never taken ourselves very seriously.
I just wish I had known this because I could have come to you when I had problems with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were never serious problems.
He is very studiously a cranky old man, and has been since his 20s. So and he intentionally, I think, will say the wrong thing to push the limits.
I don't know what that's like at all.
But you do know what it's like to have a heart of gold, and that's what Eric has.
Aww,
he is
very nice. To hold someone's heart of gold in your hand and watch it drip down. Oh, sorry, that's a different Zoom call. Okay, how about this lovely picture?
That's my Lauraling. So Aja's there with me, and Fabian. That's my niece Kate holding my banner, and we had taken back because most scribal artists don't actually have their art. So we actually I wanted to have some of the art with me, both during my vigil and during the procession. And so I had to go out and ask people to give it back. And so these are the ones that I actually got back, and they processed in with me.
That's cool.
It's fun. Yeah.
I have questions about the facial hair in this picture.
So this was, it was actually glued on.
I mean, it almost looks like it was added with a marker after the.
I know, it's terrible. So this is during my reign. This is boys' night out at my reign, during my reign, and I'm there, the second one from the left. I am Hans in this picture, and Steffi's on the far right. She is Franz. So we went out drinking one night at Estrella, leaving the crowns behind, her coronet and my crown. And Elsie got milk there with the looking like she's got milk.
Uh-huh.
And then Vera, who's currently queen. So we went out. One of the things I love about this photo is I was going to say that we raided, but we didn't raid the closets of four dukes. Four dukes volunteered their Launchknecht gear so that we could do this. So we've got some pretty high pedigreed lederhosen there.
Probably a lot of it designed by Mari, I'm guessing.
Probably. So we went out drinking, and we met up with a couple other people, including Constantina, Duchess Constantina, who was trying to teach us German drinking songs, and failing because we were pretty plastered before we even got started. So the only one that I was able to pick up on was Last Night I Masturbated, which I sang in every camp at Estrella as loudly as I could. So it was the night of a kingdom party. It was either Callantyre or the Outlands who was having a kingdom party, and we show up, and we are, the shortest, most obnoxious Launchknecht you've ever seen. And I am singing Last Night I Masturbated at the top of my lungs. And people were starting to grumble. And so finally I hear, that's it, I'm going to take care of this. And it was actually Hamish. I can't remember his last name now, but Hamish turns around and he's like, look, Your Majesty. And he and some other Westerners escorted us back home, which it really was time for me to go back home. So the next day is the equestrian championship, and I am in a very broad-brimmed hat trying to like block out the evil ball in the sky, and I'm sitting next to either the Queen of Outlands or the Queen of Callantyre. Whoever had the party last night. And I was introduced, and she said, were you at the party last night? And I'm like, oh, I think I might have to apologize for my cousins, Hans and Franz, and any bad behavior that they might have gotten up to. And she said, oh, no, that's not why I was asking. I just wanted you to know that if your cousins are out and about again, I have a cousin who would like to accompany them. But that was the only appearance that
it
Hans
seems has. Really super period to me. I just want to say
Yes.
it. Like this seems like something that could have come straight out of a folk tale from the time period. So, you know.
So one of the things that I love about this, and like I said, my mustache did not make it home that night. I don't know where it is. Hopefully I'm
sure it was biodegradable.
Anyway,
return to the earth.
So at the next event, so at Estrella, our entire Oberthen guard came down. So I had fighters, I had heavy and rapier, and they made a huge showing because Fabian was taking the field with the rapier fighters that event. And so we had this giant contingent, and so I had like 4 Oberthen guard members who were there. And the next time we saw them, they actually presented me with this little reliquary. And it came wrapped up, and inside of it, I've lost the little piece of paper, but there was a little piece of paper that said, Her Occidental Majesty's mustache. And they they gave me this keychain because my actual mustache was lost to posterity. But so they gave me this little keychain so that I would always remember the visit of Hans and Franz.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
All right, moving on. This is to this lovely, gorgeous SCA picture perfect photo.
That is my favorite photo from our reign, and it's one of my favorite photos of the two of us together. But this is stepping down. And you can see Steffi's still on the throne there, over to the side. But it was really a magical reign. We didn't have all sorts of horrible things that we had to deal with. We were very lucky in that regard. We just had just enough challenge to feel like we were doing some work. But it was really special. And Fabian just about made me cry there, with whatever it was that he said. And, true to form for me, any kind of super emotional moment, I'm just like overcome at the time, and then I can't remember any of it later. So thank God for pictures.
Yeah.
But it was sad to say goodbye.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
This is Providora, which was such an exciting, as the first Prova. It was such an exciting event. Our household was out in force, and these.
I see Connor and Isa.
Yeah.
Right behind you. I'm trying to get her to do an interview with us. So.
Oh yeah.
Make sure we'll send her yours and.
Okay.
Put some pressure on her.
So Fabian especially had such a good time at this event because it reminded him so much of the Laurel Prize tourney at Rowaney Festival in Lakak, which just has a huge turnout, and just everybody fights as hard as they can, and there are absolutely no consequences. You're not in danger of making a 6-month or 4-month commitment if you win. And so the fighting was amazing. It was just super, super fun. And it was something new. It was something new in the West, which, in my opinion, we just don't see enough of. We don't see enough new stuff. But that banner is my personal badge, the winged heart, and my rose and laurel medallion, and then the ivy leaf is my personal charge for my actual arms, and that was a gift from Steffi. And I think that the writing says, the second one says Nostra Va, which is a very, very bad Latin translation of our one of our unofficial household mottos, which is "Go Us." So it actually says "We go" in Latin, but actually saying "Go Us" didn't work out right. It sounded dumb.
I mean,
and Nostra Va is something that we can just yell at each other.
Go Us is not exactly great English either, so
There we go. So it works.
This is adorable.
Thank you. This is how I think of the SCA. This is like my perfect SCA. Just running around, laughing your head off at something that's happening. And anytime we get to the point where this is not happening, it's time to take stock. We actually, after our reign, and we had a couple reigns in a row, it was us, and then and of course Connor and Isa, on various thrones, and right after Steffi and Eric stepped down, Megan and Alvar stepped up, or vice versa. But it just felt like everybody was reigning or doing a great big job or getting a peerage. And it was just bam, 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 bam for like 3 years in a row. And we all said, this is not so much fun anymore. And we decided that we were all going to quit whatever we were doing and be pirates. And so we didn't really, but we did. My niece Kate actually made us a bunch of pirate flags that we could hang in our pavilion and at least pretend to be pirates who didn't do anything.
I mean, Vikings were kind of pirates, so you could just come to Ontier the next time you feel that and hang out with some of the Viking era households, kind of get the same effect. Plus, they had ginger cats. That was something they were really into. So,
I have a ginger cat.
There you go. See, there are jokes I would like to tell right now, and if we were in person, we would be telling them, and I'm not going to say them. Okay. Moving on.
So this is actually a picture of our pavilion. Is why I picked this. So we have a giant pavilion. It's called Der Monster. And it's 24 by 36 feet big, and it has been really, really important in my SCA experience because I am by nature a homebody. I have a very difficult time inviting myself into somebody else's camp, and I struggle to overcome this because I do trust people, but there's a piece of me that says, when yes, they said you can make yourself at home, but they were just being nice. And so it's really hard for me to get past that. And so it's actually really important for me to have a space that I'm solidly at home at events. And it's important for Steve to be super social. So he is as extroverted as I am introverted. And so the monster has ended up being this perfect compromise between the two of us, because I love hosting parties. I'm just so much more comfortable at my own party because I know I'm welcome and I know what's going to happen, and it's just easier for me. And so he built the monster, and it has seen a huge amount of wear and tear and usage. And in this particular instance, the West Kingdom needed new thrones, and so they were asking people to do fundraisers to raise money for the throne. So at a Sinagwan Coronet, which is in October, we threw an Oktoberfest, and Viscountess Isabella and I made tons and tons and tons of German sausage, and we made potato salad and apple strudel, and we basically put on this fundraiser. All sorts of people brewed a bunch of beer for it, and we had this crazy blowout party that is one half of the personality of the monster. Also, we had, I don't know if you can see the stein that I should have got one out of the cupboard. The stein that Fabian's holding, it says the Saucy Wench, and it has a line drawing of the Saucy Wench sign, which we got all sorts of flack for because she is bare-breasted.
So I just broke my cup, my green, I had a little green one. That actually was the 1 year that it was the salty bint.
Yes.
And with the bear, and I broke it, and I was so heartbroken because I used that cup in the SCA for years as my primary drinking cup. So if anybody's getting rid of one at a yard sale, please give it to me.
So it all hope is not lost, because the Salty Bint is actually the tavern at Laka Growany Festival.
Oh.
And we bought a bunch of their cups.
Maybe maybe was a gift for like during a rain or something that somebody,
or we might have given it to you, because we bought a bunch of them because Salty Bint, Saucy Wench, and obviously sisters.
Because it was at a Saucy Wench Tavern they were
Yeah.
being given out. So maybe it was because we were working at it and showing our cleavage to people. And
Yeah.
that was the year we were trying to give away a bunch of alcohol that people had been given during their reigns.
That's how the Saucy Wench got started.
So maybe that's it, because this was a long time ago. Like,
So the Saucy Wench started when Fabian was with Bryn.
yeah.
And,
oh yeah, that's the right era, because I was still in the
Yeah.
West. So
they
that's so
had
funny.
they had all sorts of indescribable
Mhm.
alcohol that they were trying to get rid of. So they made a sign and they set up a little bar and they called it the Saucy
Well,
Wench.
I think Adina and I maybe went around and tried to get people to try it. Now, given the previous conversation we had about consent, I just want to be clear that we did not tell anybody that they shouldn't drink or should drink or anything like that. This was merely walking around with little cups and blinking our eyes at people and saying, "Do you want to try some?"
Yes.
And
yeah, so we typically, so we went through a couple of years, probably 5 years, where we threw big Saucy Wench parties at almost every crown, and we ended up frequently coming home with more alcohol than we had taken. But unfortunately, we would take like vodka and rum and gin and things
bring back.
and we would bring back like hot damn and
butterscotch.
Yeah, exactly. Buttershots and just like, oh gosh.
It's so funny.
Mix this stuff into anything.
And if you're not a big drinker, which I am not, again, you look at that and you're like, there's not enough incentive in the world to drink that stuff. There really isn't, not even to taste it. So, I want to circle back to something you just said though, and that was about feeling welcome or not, and the way hospitality is extended. And I do have a little bit of a pet theory that those of us who may have had kind of complex relationships, maybe with family, where even if they said you were welcome, you were still, your behavior was being held to a certain standard that maybe wasn't fully explained to you, that there is some of that idea that, well, I said make yourself at home, but I didn't mean, put your shoes.
I didn't know you were going to act like that.
I didn't know you were going to act like that. Exactly. And so for people that have relatively poor social pragmatism, and that would be people like me, I have to ask if something's okay. And that means I have to be able to hold somebody capable of being honest with me. So if I can hold someone capable of having good boundaries, which is the other, like there's consent and then there's boundary setting. And I say to someone, hey, is it okay if I'm sitting here? I want to make sure I'm not taking somebody's spot, or does somebody need this chair? And then find out that somebody was like, well, Jagmar was in my chair and I didn't want to, blah, 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 but I really wanted to sit down. It's like, I need to be able to hold people capable of having good boundaries, because that is the only way this works. Right. That is the basis of all of this. And good hospitality starts, to my mind, with really good boundary setting and making it really clear to people what is and isn't okay, and keeping those lines of communication open. And in the SCA, we're not always good at that.
I had to learn. I had to, because I've got this big space that I'm essentially the chatelaine of. Right. And I had to learn that, because my first, like, people would stop by and go, oh, you have all this space. Can I put my stuff here? And I had to learn, because my first impulse was, well, you don't want to be a bitch. So yes, of course you can. But I actually don't want your crap all over, the front of my Fifth Avenue. I'm absolutely fine with you putting it back behind the kitchen. Right. So I actually had to learn to say, let me help you find a safe space for that. Could you put it over here? And we try and keep this front of this open for the people who are watching their fighters. And, and then people are typically saying, oh, thank you very much for letting me know that, you know what the rules are. Yeah. I actually came from a huge family. I have a giant family. And I think that some of my social stuff has to do with, we all went to school together. So I actually didn't really make any friends until probably like friends outside my family until probably middle school. Close friends, because I'm one of I think half a dozen cousins who were born in the same year and who lived in easy access of each other and went to school together. And so it was I didn't really learn how the world worked outside of my family.
The stakes are different.
Yeah, and
they're always going to be around, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the other thing I love about this particular picture is just how happy Steve is, or pardon me, Fabian.
Yeah. I see a lot of familiar faces. So I was back in Ontario by then, so I didn't.
Yeah.
I missed this particular party, but I'm sure I would have been helping you do something.
So what was funny is I thought we were going to make all of this money off this, the sausage, and where we really made the bucks is we had a competition for so all of these people made beer for us, and I bought these big pitchers. They're just plastic pitchers to fill up with beer, and then we had people volunteer to go around and serve them. We basically said, let's have a contest of who can get the most tips, and all of the tips were going to be donated to the Throne Fund. And so the servers went nuts over like cutting each other out and batting their eyes and flattering people outrageoously and doing whatever they could to get to make more tips than the others, and so that ended up being a pretty significant fundraiser in and of itself.
This is really cute.
This is the other side of the saucy wench. So this is actually at a Great Western War, and it's just this is our home space. It's our living room. When we had kids camping with us, we put out these carpets and these big throw pillows, and they'd just be like all over the place. And in this case, Dina's kids, and
I was gonna say that looks like Celestial's back of her head.
Yes. Yeah. So just all of a sudden, like this big random. I think Zan's not even in the pit. Oh, he's covering his head.
Yeah.
But these kids just descended out of nowhere, and there's a pirate hat from when we were pirates, on the ground there. But they just descended out of nowhere and attacked Fabian, and he just had so much fun, fighting, rawr. And I'm there in the back, like looking for something in the bench boxes, which is, we always say that that's the song of our people, is that clunk, clunk, clunk of the bench boxes
opening and closing.
This is our pelican scroll. This is one of my favorite of the hundreds of scrolls that I've done. So Fabian and I were reluctant pelicans. He was resisting, and as was I, but I really felt like he should be recognized for everything he had been contributing to the kingdom for such a long time, long before, I ever showed up. And he said that he wouldn't take it if I didn't. And so we both agreed to it. But we actually were elevated Friday night, and like people actually came out and gave us cloaks because we didn't even have garb on yet. And, but that was the deal. I mean, we really were reluctant peers in this case. But I actually, this is, the wording on this is from a period grant of arms, and most of it. And we did it together. It's both of our scrolls. It's for, you can see it's given to both of us on the same day. And, it's one of the few things that I've ever done that's actually hanging in my house. So it's cool. It's just special to me. Plus, I think I nailed it on that particular script.
Nice. I wouldn't be able, I could do 3 letters of this maybe, and they would not look like they were from the same script. So, you know,
Plus, so
bad skills.
it was a little scrap of vellum that had been cut off a scroll, and it was just a little, what am I going to do with this? Oh, I guess I'll do my own scroll. Steffi and I, long after our reigns, this is one of my favorite pictures of us together.
Is that a piece of intaglio on the front of her coronet?
Ring. Oh yeah. So it's a piece of amber etched with her arms.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
Eric commissioned that
That's cool.
and had it set. And Eric made my coronet.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the ring that she's holding,
Uh-huh.
the chain, says courage on it, and so she was given that. I think the second time that she was diagnosed with cancer. So she wore that. On and off until she died.
Yeah.
So it was really special to her.
Yeah.
This is not an SEA event, but it's one of my favorite pictures of myself. So this was taken, I'm sitting on top of a fence, and Esmeralda at the lakes is looking up at me, and she grabbed that shot. But we are at a Battle of the Nations event. It's the first one that Fabian and I went to in France. And I was still having fun at the Battle of the Nations at that point. That faded pretty quickly. Like a lot of organizations, you know, if you don't know how to manage volunteers, you can end up using and abusing them pretty quickly. And I, not by Fabian at all, but I ended up feeling very pressured to work for free and work my ass off for free and for almost zero thanks by the leadership of that organization. So you know, I only traveled to those events with Fabian a couple of times, and then I'm like, no, sorry, separate vacations at this point.
Good boundaries. Really.
Yeah, well, I had to because it was infuriating.
Yeah.
And part of it was having been in the SCA and both been a volunteer and managed volunteers in the SCA, and really seeing, I mean, we're not perfect, but you know, seeing how well it can be done, and then just having this really horrible experience. And it's like, no, I'm not paying thousands of dollars to take my happy ass across, you know, continents and you know, be treated like shit. So no, thank you. This was the town fair. So this is an event that Fabian and I put together. We were having one of those not having very much fun stages, and thinking, well, what do we want to be different? And both being artists ourselves, we said, you know what? I'm not a fan of the list field. The list field is a wonderful organization for a camp that is focused on attorney. But it's developed into a reflex that we always set up a list field, whether we need one or not. And I'm just not a fan of it. And so it was like, wouldn't it be awesome? We always talk about, you know, we're this town, we're this community. Wouldn't it be awesome if we actually felt like one? And if we could just have space to do the things that we really love to do, not just watch people fight and drink. And we came up with this idea of a town fair, and which is basically, we set it up like Crossroads, and we had people, you know, basically you couldn't just set up your personal camp on the main square, or, you know, the main thoroughfares. those spaces were reserved for people who were making something or selling something or doing something to entertain the populace. And so we had all sorts of artisans who were just doing their thing, and people could stop by and look or learn or try. Otherwise, they could just do their thing. And we also had a lot of merchants who came out, and we had people just went crazy. We had some food booths. We had a little chapel that people set up with a labyrinth in back of it. We had some taverns with gambling going on. It was just so much fun. And we had this vision, and we had to convince people to let us have a weekend and let us try it and take a chance that it would work. And we ended up having, it's not big for you guys, but we ended up having like 500 people show up.
Very respectable. Yeah.
And people were just like, I feel like my love of the SCA has been rekindled. Certainly my love of the SCA was rekindled.
Are you going to do them after the pandemic?
It's not something that you can do really even every year, but we talked about every other year.
You could alternate it with Sportive Kings, and that can be the Art of Kings or whatever, and those we can come down to you, and then you can come up here.
We had the players come out, and they were doing there was like a stage where there were plays and performances and things like that. What happened the second time we tried to do it is it was bundled in with 50-year coronation. And that was just a mistake. It's its own flavor, its own event. But these are two of my grandchildren, by the way.
There's a better photo of them coming up.
Yeah, a more recent photo. But we had all sorts of games, like field games that we were playing, horse races with the hobby horses, and three-legged races, and just like art and silliness and camaraderie. And it was slow paced, and it just fed my soul. And that was the feedback that we got from so many people. So I do hope, this is one of the things that's really hard for me. There is talk about doing it again, and somebody else has asked to do it, and I have to be okay with standing aside and letting people take it wherever it's going to go next and not controlling it.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
I'm not so good at it either, but I
get that. I get it, but
it'll find its way.
Yeah.
So this is the last time that Fabian fought for me. So, and there's Steffi holding the parasol. So almost 6 years ago now, we were in a car accident, and Fabian suffered some pretty severe whiplash. And this was about 5 months later, and he was feeling well enough that he decided to try fighting. He actually went to finals, but he ended up flat on his back for a week after that. And we just agreed that until and if he really recovers, then he is not going to take that kind of chance again. So he actually hasn't fought in over 5 years, which has been hard for both of us, because I love consorting, but I really love consorting for him. And so it was, this was a really special memory to have that kind of one last time. Yes. So this is the last event that I was at. This was 12th night a year ago. And when Vera and Uther stepped up, and we held the memorial for my sister Steffi. And so my daughter and her husband and my niece and my grandkids were all there for the memorial. And Vera is both a member of our household and we consider her a member of our family, and the kids all call her Auntie Vera. And so this is really special to me. That oh, and there's that ballet gown.
Striped outfit. Yeah. Over a shirt, I see.
Yes.
Sensible. Yeah.
Yes, because it's like going down to her sternum. But yeah, that the red dress was mine also in younger days.
That's great.
But yeah, so life goes on, right? And we find a different way to interact. With Steve or Fabian and I have been talking a lot about what does the SCA look like for us.
Yeah.
If we're not a fighting couple anymore. And, we got to figure that out. We both have our art, although, his art is armoring, which is also challenging, with an injury like that. So we're going to find our way to come back and not quite the same, but find a space for ourselves.
We are running a little late already, and we haven't even gotten to all our questions. No, this is wonderful. This is
great.
Been a wonderfully organic conversation, but let's maybe hit a couple of our questions just so that we can tell Joel that we did,
Check.
Right. When the teacher's back, we can say that we actually did what we were supposed to. So Dawn, why don't I hand that over to you?
Okay. So you've talked a lot. I'm going to kind of twist it a little bit.
Okay.
You talked a lot about how important consorting is to you. Is there advice that you would give yourself before you reigned? Is there something you wish you had known?
I did know it. It turned out to be really good advice. So Fabian, having ruled so many times, has having reigned so many times, has a rule that if you have a serious chance of winning a tournament, you need to have a plan. So and specifically, he's like, he doesn't want to be Meatloaf again. He wants to go in there thinking, I've got something new that I can give the kingdom. And so we talked about that. I thought
maybe you meant Meatloaf, like from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That would be fun.
Just give up half his brain and do a song and dance for everybody. I would watch that movie. I just want to be there.
So having plan and having something new. And so, we talked about what could we do, and coming off I think my first tour of duty as the Kingdom Scribal officer, I said, and having wrestled for years with the Dread Beast backlog, I said, I want to make sure that every award we give out comes with a scroll. And we actually accomplished that. We recruited scribes. You guys have that. That's just par for the course. This was radical here, to try and put that in place. And luckily, we had a secret weapon, which is Robin of Rosewood, who had moved down from Ontario. So
we're familiar with that particular exodus.
So, she actually came down after our reign, but Aja had found, she had learned about this, and she's like, try it, you can make it happen. And so we made this commitment that every award that we gave out was going to come with a scroll. And we missed the mark with a couple peerages, especially some surprise peerages that happened up in Orwurtha. But otherwise, we actually did that. We gave out a scroll, a finished scroll, not a promissory, with every award we gave, which I was really proud of.
But what we do is actually charters. We photocopy and then have painted like a standard.
Yeah, we didn't do quite that. What we did is we came up with, so we did an Italian reign, and Aja made 6 Italian designs, that could be, you could put them over, you could put a piece of pergamonata over it so you could see through it and trace it out. And pergamonata is a vegetable vellum. And then we taught people to paint. And I calligraphed every single one of them.
Wow.
So it worked, and they were not, the ultimate art that anybody was ever going to receive, but they were out the door. And anything, I actually recruited a half a dozen scribal laurels who I took all of these dozens of we call them charters, that had been painted, and I took anything that was a little bit iffy. I took them to the laurels and they charted them up for us. And their words, not mine. I think that was Aldith came up with that. So they charted them up, and to make sure that they were respectable going out. And I was really proud of accomplishing that.
Yeah.
The other thing that we did is we tried to really encourage just some fun, some fun on like Sunday mornings. And for the crown that we hosted, I actually challenged my guard to put on a horse race. And I had been very, very taken, again, Italian, but the Palio that happens in Siena and has been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years, I was very intrigued by it. And so my guard actually sponsored a horse race. And basically the rules, there were no horses allowed, but the rule was you could figure out anything, but you had to have one or more people being a horse, and one or more people being a rider. And the kingdom just went nuts with it. They had big teams. They made pennants and banners. The guard laid out a course. There were people cheating, which is very Sienese in the real Palio. That at one point, one of the teams actually, as soon as their horse went by, they went and changed the course. So this is like straight out of, a Roadrunner cartoon or something, but it was, people responded, and, and they had fun. And it was, we had the rubber ducky regatta, when we were at the sheep ranch, with the creek, and it just trying to have fun. And it's kind of, it's so counterintuitive that you actually have to plan and work hard to get people to have fun. That's not just sitting around and drinking.
So I would follow that up with, as we come out of this pandemic, I think I know in Aitenveld they have a crown waiting to step up, but most of the kingdoms are going to have a crown tourney and a coronation. And so what would you suggest to those couples that want to fight in that? How do they prepare for crown and coronation on the same day?
One, I say let go of the fact that you're not going to have 4 months of prep, and don't just let go of it, celebrate it, because at the end of the day, you might be the only person who remembers what you stepped up in. So
unless we show pictures of it here.
Well, yeah. But that's a different kind of story then, right? So, and honestly, Owertha's been doing it for decades, having their tournament and stepping up the next day without any idea of who's going to be in that ceremony. So let go of that, but still go in having a plan. What are you going to offer? Because yes, you just won a big prize, but it's as soon as you step out, it's not actually you. Mm-hmm. It's not about you anymore. So have a plan of what you're going to offer when you show up to fight,
and know that you're taking on running a kingdom after we've all been isolated after a pandemic.
Yes. Hopefully that won't scare people away.
And it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I think people are gonna step up, and not just the people who have been cooped up and are desperate to fight. I think that people are going to step up to make the next reign really, really amazing.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Do you want me to go ahead and ask the next ones, or do you want to alternate?
You go ahead.
Okay. If you could create one award that does not currently exist, what would it be?
Any award. You know, no drama to create it. And it can be
fairy tales.
It can be a kingdom award. It can be a society. Actually, we created an award based on a fairy tale because Ab and I created the ugly duckling, Dinklima Ailing, in Snodwa, which is literally based on a fairy tale. So, you know.
So yes, I do have an award that I would create. I don't know exactly what it would look like, or what the rules would be, or like how many times could you get it. But I think that I would like to award people who inspire others to keep playing. So whatever that looks like. And, you know, not just your consort, but who actually, like, are you looking, you know, who's doing something that makes you excited to show up? Who's got you convinced to participate? You know, I think that would be a great thing to recognize. And I don't see any reason not to keep giving it to the same people over and over if they keep inspiring people to come out and try something new, or to volunteer, or do whatever it is.
Or someone who's an exceptional student. I'm thinking about your experience coming into a group and inspiring them to want to teach again. You know, sometimes it's somebody being an exceptional student is really, it just keeps people going, you know, because someone really is ready to take the mantle of something.
And I was rewarded for that. They all got together and wrote a recommendation for my AOA, which Fabian gave me, my first AOA.
Yep, that's very cool. That's funny. My husband gave me some of my first awards too.
Fabian gave me my second AOA at the Penzic that we hooked up together. And I was like, he called me into court, and I was like, oh my God, is he giving me an award because I slept with him last night? And he starts the AOA ceremony, different queen, but starts the AOA ceremony and blah, 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 blah. I can't believe no one's giving you this. I'm like, you gave me this. And he's just like, and he's Fabian, so he just rolled with you, and he's like, well, it just goes to show that I was right.
And so 2 arms are better than 1 in many, many cases. So
yeah, well, then the 3 times a lady joke started. I said, no, that'll never happen, because I'm never accepting an award of arms from anybody but Fabian. And he's with me now. So.
That's great. Well, and sometime, maybe not on this interview, but sometime when we're feeling like we want to have a frank talk about this, I always like comparing notes with people who end up married or with someone who is an established SCA fighter and royal peer, and what that's like.
That is a whole conversation.
It really is. I'm tempted to do a Grace Under Pressure After Dark, where I get a bunch of people together on the same call who kind of have had similar experiences around sort of some of the toxicity that happens around mostly women and their identities in the SCA.
Being a ducal popsy.
Yeah, and kind of what that's like. And sort of the covert sexism and misogyny that can really be part of that, and how that is changing, but how we need to really be vigilant about it.
So I'm not going to take the bait, otherwise we'll never end this call.
Right. But let's do that.
But I have something to say.
Oh, so do I. We can totally. Okay, that's it. We'll have to do a few Grace Under Pressure After Dark and like tackle some of these very specific topics. So
yeah,
let me know when.
That's my award that I would, the Inspiration Award.
That's wonderful. That would be really cool.
Okay. What is your favorite event to go to? What is an event that's on your bucket list?
So my favorite event has been the town fair. That was my all-time favorite, and I hope it happens again. And bucket list, I want to make it back to Rowaney Festival, which was just amazing. Although, you know, sometimes you can't go back. You know, that was a long time ago when I went. It was 15, 20 years. I also have never made it up to Sport of Kings, which I would like to do.
That's much closer.
Yes, it is. But for the art, it just seems amazing. So those are two of the top ones.
Yeah. Wonderful.
I'd like to do, like Gulf Wars and Lilies and some of the other big interkingdom wars that I've never been to, just to get to a different part of the country. But just throw it at me. I'll try it.
I've never been to those either, but someone would have to like tell me exactly which bugs I would encounter for me to go. Like, I need to know what bugs are there.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about chiggers. I don't even know what they are, but I'm concerned about them.
But bugs, and as everyone who watches this regularly will know, can I wash my hands?
Yes.
How primitive is the site? Is there the ability to wash my hands? And if there's not, I can just see pictures and be fine with it. So yeah. So I feel like you've answered this already, but I'm going to ask it to you point blank. What keeps you in the SCA now? After reigning, you have 2 peerages. Okay. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think this is important for people to know, especially when you're sitting kind of on a mountain of awards that you've earned and things you've experienced.
So this is my SCA family behind me. These are, this is our household. We very intentionally so when I commissioned this for Fabian's night, the 25th anniversary of his knighting, it was, all the shields were blank. And so we sat down and talked about, did he want it to be filled in with his knightly lineage? What did he want there? And he said, no, I want it to be our family. And thought, good, because that means I can go up there. But it's, our family is what keeps us going, and we, kind of expand and contract. We decided that we can't handle it anymore and we all have to be pirates, and, but it's just, and I'm sorry, I've talked about this a lot, but, when Steffi died, the first people I called were my SCA family. And I love my biological family. I absolutely love them, but they haven't felt, there's a really special place in my life and my heart for all of these people who I chose and who chose me. And that's what keeps me going. And it's beyond our household too. My group of girlies, which is similar to the bitches up in MTR, it's just, they're the ones who keep me going, the people who I can tell anything to or call at any time. And the society's given me that. So that's what keeps me coming back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. I mean, we've changed this question a couple times because we keep getting roughly the same answer, which is people. And I think that it's a good reminder that ultimately, no matter what you've accomplished in the SCA, that it's the relationships that we've built that have been the most important. Yeah. So how do we keep people with their sights on that as the highest priority, and what do we need to do, since we have rank and privilege, to make sure that people's ability to maintain those relationships is a value that we're instilling in everything that we do in the SCA.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And we do. That comes with being a peer. It comes with being a human, but it's magnified when you become a peer. You have to try to be a better human.
Well, speaking of better humans, you have been so wonderfully generous with us, and this has been a wonderful interview. It is well over the time that we typically end. That is okay. I'm
not usually a chatty Cathy, but you guys.
It's been terrific.
Nobody's complaining.
No, not at all. And also, I don't always get to talk with people who, like, having lived in different kingdoms, when you move away from a kingdom, there's a lot of touchstones that you don't take with you. People don't get it. They don't know what Eric parties are like in the West.
Yeah.
And how that works there, and just things like that, where it's just so different. And you can't go back. If I were to move back to the West right now, I'm not going to
be the same.
It wouldn't be the same. That's right. And
Right.
so, you know, but always making sure that we take away from that the very best of it.
Yeah.
Take away from our reigns the very best of what we can, and to be the best we can. So at any rate, out of gratitude, what we would do right now is a big gift basket exchange, just like you would in any court. But we cannot give you a gift basket because we are in a pandemic, which the upside to that is we can put anything we want in it. It can be our fantasy gift basket. We can fill it with anything real or imaginary. So my people would have first inquired as to your preferences on a few things. So red or white wine,
Red, please.
milk or dark chocolate,
Dark chocolate.
okay, and puppies or kittens.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, that works really well. So this is what your gift basket will have in it. You will have some lovely Eastern Washington red blends. It's my go-to. They're not, they're good sipping wines. You don't have to worry about, like, if you spill some of it down your front, you haven't wasted.
I love a blend.
Yeah. Yeah. You haven't wasted like $50 worth of wine. What's that?
A melange.
Yes, a melange of some like lovely Eastern Washington grapes. Thanks to climate change, we are a great wine area up here now. And so some great red wine, and then some dark chocolate made someplace local and very exclusive that you can't get any other way, for you to immediately forget about in your gear at the event, and you get it home and it's all melted because you forgot to put it in the cooler, right? So
it's not going to make it home.
That's right.
I like Moonstruck chocolates from Portland because they're really good.
There you go. Very good. Moonstruck, and we'll put some Theo chocolates or something for. We tell you what, we will tell you to put it in your cooler. That's how it will. And then I think what we would do is just have you go over to a Shaxie's house and roll around with all the dogs and cats. I think.
I love it.
I mean,
Well,
then,
you like chickens?
No chickens. I'm afraid of birds.
Oh, okay. We'll avoid the backyard.
I think that would solve a lot of things all at one time, because you would do that the same week as Sport of Kings, which, if I could wave my wand, what I would say is we are going to give you an all expenses paid trip to Sport of Kings, which we're not. Let's just be really clear.
For two.
About that. Yeah.
Yes.
For two, or
because it's on Fabian's bucket list also.
Or maybe you guys have separate vacations. I mean, just kidding. I think he's watching, so I am joking. So, but the thing is about Sport of Kings, it's kind of a fantasy. Like, I'm not going to pay your airfare, but you can come and be hosted and eat at the Virgin Countess and do all of those things and just show up with your stuff. And usually out of kingdom guests are put up in tents that are borrowed or with people, and we do actually extend a lot of hospitality. So
I love it.
That part could actually happen. But then the other thing that I would definitely give to you is the next time you are holding a big fundraiser or a big event in your giant tent, a professional bartender to take care of all of the
and who's going to serve some mocktails in addition to cocktails.
There you go. So we would hire somebody to, and so that person is sitting in your basket too, apparently. And yes, I'm being reminded that the basket has no handles on it, because baskets with handles are the devil, and it makes it so you can't pack it back in your car. So I'm very insistent on this, and everybody needs to remember not to give people baskets with handles that don't collapse anyway.
Canvas baskets are the most brilliant invention ever.
Agreed. So there were quite a few comments in the feed as the interview was going along. I encourage you to read them.
Okay.
And people saying
probably all from my grandkids.
No, in fact, I see some familiar names here.
You got your mirror. I see Adina.
Yeah, and Karen.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Karen.
Just people saying some lovely comments about you. So do go and look at those. And as always, this interview will be posted on the YouTube channel that people can go look for and watch it if they missed it the first time.
Awesome. So we'll get tech support so my mom can see it.
That's right. And it's also archived on the Sisters Interview
That's right.
Facebook page. So
thank you again, both of you, for not only for having me here, but for hosting all of these variety of interviews. They're fascinating. So it's awesome. And I know that your time's not free, so thank you very much.
It has been an absolute gift for us as
Our
well.
time kind of is free. Right.
All right. You should have homework, Dagmar.
I should be doing my homework right now. That is true. I do have a class that I'm in. So I'll do the outro, Ashaksi. So thank you again. And please join us next week for our interview with Duchess Care Cherie of Atenveld, which is going to be very exciting. We don't know her. We have just heard wonderful things about her and that she knows a lot about earlier days of the kingdom. And that's very exciting.
Oh, neat.
Yep. So do tune in for that or watch it after it's been recorded. And thank you again, Ashaksi, for being my stunt host. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Good night.